or a possibility for Ukraine, like for example, CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which may seriously impact the position of Ukrainian manufacturers in Europe, because now there will be extra tax on any merchandise manufactured in countries with utilization of CO2. And moreover, United States and Europe are now negotiating on the level of export creation of low carbon trade zone, which means that CBAM will be further introduced in different countries, like for example, United States, or even in places like Mexico, because the national determined contribution in Mexico, CBAM is listed. And I guess this tendency will be further implemented in many different states. So not to say how impressed I was when the Chinese Republic of People has released its commitment to become climate neutral to 2017, a couple of days ago. So I guess that's it, and we will start today. Our discussion will be on the following ways. Each speaker will have the floor around 10. We might have several extra minutes, 12, to present your view, what is needed for the sector, what changes should be done, or what changes should not be done to get the sector ready and steady for the further improvement and for the reforms in order that we may meet the standards of European Green Deal and be competitive when it comes to trade with our European colleagues and achieve at some point climate neutrality till 2017, or maybe even earlier, till the framework defined by European Commission. And the special attention of our speakers will be devoted to the carbon tax in the light of two existing drafts of the bills regarding its increase from 10 hryvnias for ton of carbon dioxide till 30 hryvnia per ton of carbon dioxide, and about the possible implementation of European emission trading scheme in Ukrainian reality, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and with regard to many details which shapes the whole implementation and which shapes the whole perception of carbon tax of emission trading scheme in Ukraine. So I'm delighted to give the floor to our first speaker, which will present the view of some of the heavy industry producers. I am delighted to give the floor to the head of the ecological consultancy, Vladislav Antypov, who is the CEO of Center of Environment and New Technologies Development. It's my honor to welcome you on our panel. The floor is yours. Please speak and say what do you think about the aforementioned, please.
Hi, my name is Vladislav Antypov. As was said, I am owner and the CEO of the Center of Environment and New Technologies Development. This is the biggest Ukrainian consulting company in the field of environmental services for heavy industries. Our specialization is steel sector, energy sector, mining, machinery, cement industry, and all other carbon-intensive sectors. I will give you my opinion, insights about current situation and some vision about future development of situation. So what about current situation? As for now, we have the law about monitoring, reporting and verification of emission of greenhouse gases, which will take in force on 1st of January in 2021. As for now, our company has developed already monitoring plans for about, I think, 30 or 40 heavy industries in steel industry, mining, and energy sector. As I know, other plants, other industries also now moving on this way, and also has developed some monitoring plans. And we're expecting to register these monitoring plans in focal point in local authority. I think it will be ministry. in the first quarter 2021. This is current situation. What we are expecting in the future. We're expecting that Ukrainian emission trading scheme will be approved by the special law. We expect that emission trading scheme will be started in, I think, 2024, 2025. Something like this, and about comparison of emission trading scheme and carbon tax. First of all, we have to keep in mind that emission trading scheme is stated and signed in association agreement between Ukraine and EU. There's a special clause there which is saying that 87 directive, EU directive, should be implemented in Ukrainian law. It means that implementation of emission trading scheme. Second thing is following Ukrainian Green Deal, new Green Deal. Ukraine now is under the risk of implementation of carbon border adjustment mechanism. I think Ryabchyn and other speakers will give you more details, but I want to just underline the risks of some Ukrainian sectors, for example, steel sector. What does it mean? What does mean this risk for steel sector? For today, Ukrainian steel sector export to EU about 5-6 million tons per year of steel products. 1 ton of steel, it's about 2-3 ton of CO2. If we will take like assumption price of 1 ton of CO2, I don't know, 25-30 euro per ton of CO2, it will give us additional custom payments for steel sector, about from 300 up to 500 million euro per year. So this estimation for these risks of implementation of CBM for steel sector of Ukraine. So for Ukrainian economy, situation is very serious, and for our opinion, implementation of emission trading scheme in Ukraine could somehow mitigate this risk. Another issues about carbon tax. So in 2019, carbon tax in Ukraine was increased in 24 times. From 10 kopeyka, I don't know, Ukrainian cents, up to 10 hryvnias. And as for now, Ukrainian industries still are not adapted to this price, because when we compare Ukraine to other countries which have much more rates of carbon tax, we have to understand that Ukraine still didn't implement environmental modernization. So we have the reason is that we have no long money for this. So unfortunately, Ukrainian last 30 years, for all years of independence, have no stable financial system, and there is no long money here to invest in environmental projects, some environmental measures which have a long payback period. So that's why my opinion and the opinion of other experts that it's very necessary to give opportunity for Ukrainian industries to make environmental modernization, and then implement any other taxes or increase of taxes or somehow. About report, few comments. First of all, about draft law 43, 46, 43, 47. For our opinion, there is a low chance that these laws will be voted by Parliament. We assume and estimate these laws as good. It's good idea of creation of carbon fund, but for my opinion, it should be done in other ways. So it should be a draft law proposed by Cabinet of Ministry, because I think that this specific draft laws will not be voted. So, but this is my opinion. Other comments for report. Okay, this part. From the point of view behavioral economy, the carbon tax carbon tax is not given the stimulus for reduction of CO2 emission compared with ETS. Totally agree with this because we understand that carbon tax is only punishment, but ETS give flexible tools for industries to improve their carbon efficiency. But other part, I not totally agree with this about regulation of the market of CO2. So there is a part of text that after implementation of ETS in Ukraine, it should be special regulation for B2B transactions, for contracts between industries when they trade directly with each other, and proposal is to set a minimum price of CO2. I'm not sure that this regulation is needed because if we are going on this way, it should be minimum price for everything, for raw materials, for services. I don't know why we should regulate direct trading of CO2. This is the same asset like others, so why we should regulate it? And I think the price will be regulated by the market. So we agree that it should be some governmental regulator which will somehow give the, I would say, flow, corridor, как сказать. Okay. So some borders of the price, it should be done, but it shouldn't be, it should be in with market tools. So this regulator just just make more auctions or less auctions. So everything should be regulated in the market way. This is my opinion and the opinion of some experts and heavy industry, which I have to present. Thank you very much. Sorry for my very good English. We have lost moderator. I could moderate further. Who want to speak?
Yeah, hello, I'm here. Sorry for that. It was a terrible problem in functioning of our system of electricity. This one more proof why RAB tariffs should be implemented in order that companies would invest their money in order to change the infrastructure. Because pursuant to that, I had a confusion with the electricity and with the Wi-Fi trouble. So
don't touch the tech when you are talking. So I think your problem with electricity connected with this company.
Yeah, maybe it's okay. Thanks, Mr. Vladislav, for such an interesting discussion. I left it at the end of it, I guess. I heard your opinion, and I guess it will be heard by our colleagues as well. And the second in a row to whom I would like to present the floor is Senior Associate of Law Firm Asters, Bogdan Shmorgun. Please, the floor is yours. You have also the possibility to show the presentation for our colleagues and for people following us on Zoom and on Facebook. We can hear you. Can't hear you still. Maybe you can try to re-log in yourself into the conference. Okay, then I guess when Bogdan will return to the conference, he'll have the floor, and now we will change the flow of our speakers. So the second in the list will be Oleksandr Sushchenko, the expert of the UNDP on green economy and green finances. Please let us know what you think about this topic, the aforementioned, the report, or the comments of Mr. Vladislav. So thanks a lot for being with us today. Please speak.
Okay, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my thoughts, let's say on the very urgent and very actual topic. The point is that maybe I've missed this notice that the presentation should be in English, so that's why I have prepared a couple of slides in Ukrainian. I suppose that it will be no problem for the audience if I will share 2 slides on this issue, just to kick off my, let's say, thoughts. Just a moment, I have to find it. Okay, yeah, let's see. Probably you can see the slide prepared on this occasion, and most of all, so let's say first of all, the idea was to show where are the roots of this topic, and why the European Union is going to introduce such let's say restrictive measures. Mostly it relates to the situation that for example, European companies, they are already using internal carbon pricing. So it means that they have market price provided by the ETS, or let's say equalized by the demand and supply on the market, and simultaneously they have their own internal carbon pricing. Why they have this tool? Very simply, they have to know what kind of let's say contract parties they should look for or select, and what kind of business or investment activities should be let's say approved or rejected based on the information that they have their own, as I said, this carbon pricing. So as a result, European Union companies, they have to report each year on their own CO2 emissions on 3 scopes, and the 3rd scope relates exactly to the suppliers. So in this case, this could be also a Ukrainian company, and even despite the fact that the price level in Ukraine is too low, once the Ukrainian products will enter are entering European Union market, European counterparties, they are analyzing carbon footprint, and they are applying this internal price to see whether the product is compatible or not, because at the end it will affect also the non-financial reporting of the company, and also this will affect also the, let's say, the price, the capital costs. Also, if the company will be trying to attract financial resources on the market by issuing green bonds or getting green credits, no matter what's the instrument will be used. But at the end, as I said, internal carbon pricing and this difference between market price and internal carbon pricing will be crucial in terms of selecting counterparties, in case of selecting providers of the goods or services, and also this will be important while getting financial support. So this is the background, let's say, of the whole story. Just to also give you some important insights into the European Green Deal, on this occasion, and notably that carbon border adjustment mechanism is not the only one instrument, let's say, incorporated into the European Green Deal. Also, agricultural sector will be affected, not at the same scale by the European Union measures, but also almost the same logic will be applied also for carbon farming initiative. But at the end, in both cases, European Union will have to take into account, let's say, WTO provisions, and this means that they cannot imply or let's say charge goods or services outside the EU, and let's say rejecting the option to introduce, for example, the same restrictive measures for the European companies. So this is one thing. And also in case if Ukraine is going to apply for some kind of, let's say, exemptions or some kind of light version of the carbon border adjustment mechanism, we have to keep in mind that there is the second principle of the WTO, it means that if European Union is going to provide or give some, let's say, light regime or something like this to Ukraine, the same measures should be also applicable for other trade partners. So this is very complicated situation, and once again, we don't have to rely only on increasing our internal environmental tax, because at the end it will not be a solution, because at the end the solution should be, let's say, found on the corporate level, or so to speak, on the ground. And I completely agree with Vlad, because we have to analyze more the situation on the corporate level, and we have to provide solutions for the corporate level, not taking money from the businesses and building up additional carbon or energy efficiency fund, because this will not solve the problem. This will only, let's say, reduce financial capacities of the of the corporate sector. But exactly, corporate sector needs additional financial resources, not reducing their abilities, but let's say we have to think how we can increase the capacities to implement, let's say, carbon reduction measures, or improve the let's say resilience to climate-related risk, and so on and so on. So let's say the solution we can find only on the corporate level, and in this case, government can only let's say facilitate mobilization of private green and sustainable finance and provide it to the corporate level. But just repeat once again my core idea. Market-based approach is the best one. Increasing environmental tax or increasing the tax rates, it doesn't provide any solution in this case, and our companies will remain without any financial resources once we will be trying to increase our internal environmental tax. So to speak, this will not provide the solution itself. So thanks a lot.
Yes, thanks, Oleksandr, for such an interesting presentation. Really, what is going on? What should Now I'm delighted to give the floor to our third speaker, so Mr. Bogdan, associate for Quorum Asters. Please, you are asked to use the presentation if you want. So floor is yours. Oh, I guess we still can't hear you. Maybe you should try to relog in once more, but with the help of your phone or what. Because we can't hear you, unfortunately. So yeah, so like we advise you to relog in once more with the other possible device you have, maybe with the phone or with the laptop, with the computer, in order to maybe to reload your device. Maybe there's some technical problem with it. And then when you return, you will use the floor to present your view. We have heard something. Can you say something? Still can hear you. So yeah, we advise you to reload your device to find a new one, and then when you return, we'll give you the floor. So yeah, so I guess we'll proceed to our next speaker once Mr. Bogdan organizes his difficulties, his technical difficulties. And I'm delighted to give the floor to Madam Olga Boiko, Industrial Ecology and Sustainable Development Committee Manager of European Business Association, to present us the view of the business of the European business, companies dealing with the European Union and wanting to export in the EU, the view of the what is going on with.
Thank you, Victor. Hello to everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for this discussion, especially in English, because there's not a lot of opportunities to give a message to our foreign partners, to our European partners, and to present the situation as it is. So yes, I represent the European Business Association, and we have more than 1,000 companies in our union. And in February this year, we launched the Industrial Ecology and Sustainable Development Committee. And one of the main objectives why company gathered in this committee was to reduce industry's greenhouse gas emissions, including CO2. So we had a lot of investigation and found a lot of information about how it works now in the European Union and how it should be implemented in Ukraine, just to have the best possible solution. And as we know now, despite the CO2 tax was introduced in Ukraine in 2011, but its nature was 100 fiscal. It meant that we started a real path to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions only, I think, 5 years ago, when we, after the association agreement was signed and after the Paris Agreement has been adopted by the Ukrainian, by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. And we always like to compare the European Union experience with Ukraine in reducing CO2 emissions. But truly, nobody says that the European government started this reform and started to provide the climate policy in 1990s, even earlier in some countries. It meant that it was 30 years ago. And they had a lot of time to adapt, to try many different solutions, instruments, and mechanisms just to find something very useful and effective. I just wanted to set some examples from different countries, just to give a background and help to understand why we should use their experience too. For example, in Germany, it was the voluntary agreement between the government and industries. It was before the introduction of CO2 tax. Then in Sweden, when the carbon tax was introduced in 1991, other progressive taxes like taxes on wealth, on inheritance and property were reduced or abolished. Then if we look at, I have also said that the energy tax in this case in Sweden was also reduced by 50%. Then if we look at the Canada's experience in 1988, it was the first commitment of Canadian government about the greenhouse gases reduction, and the government tried to cut, and not only tried, but it did it. They reduced the income tax for corporations and lowered some other tax rates, just to try to fix the balance and not to raise the pressure, especially the tax pressure on business. And what we have now in Ukraine, unfortunately, now we have only the reduction, not the reduction, but a lot of tentatives and tries to raise the tax rate, but not to use it properly. I mean, not to finance, for example, environmental events or some really effective actions just to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, or to modernize the industrial sector. And that's why we in European Business Association, we made a list, I would say, of actions that should be done before the emission trade scheme is launched in, I guess, 2025. Only if the EMRV system that Vlad was talking earlier will be successfully implemented. Then we should also think about that if I'm not mistaken, in European Union, there are some companies that are participants of this trade, of this emission trade market, but they do not pay additional carbon tax. So we have to do the same in Ukraine. For companies that will benefit from this scheme, they should be, the carbon tax should be abolished for them. The third point for us is to think about the use of the environmental tax revenues, because we should think that it should be used for improving the environmental situation and ecological modernization, especially if we talk about industrial facilities. And the European experience combines, for example, the provision of state support through funds and grants, along with encouraging green modernization. And Ukraine, we think, has a significant potential for targeted use of this environmental tax revenues, including CO2 tax revenues. And we should really, we can really improve the state of the environment. And we should know that that in 2019, we collected more than 3.8 billion of hryvnias of taxes, and only 157 millions were used for environmental measures. And really, these environmental measures have a lot of questions. And the fourth point is that there must be some, I would say, pilot period, just like testing period for companies before the real trade, emission trade market is implemented. Why? Because if I'm not mistaken, one more time, there was 3 periods of emission trade scheme in the European Union, and now it will be the 4th period. So in Ukraine, we should use not the same model, but to try to find the best from everything they used in the European Union. And we should not forget about our nationally determined contribution that is about to be to prepare to be published, I guess, in a few months, and it should be ambitious, but in the same time it should be realistic. That every economical sector has to have its own climate policy, its own climate target, for example, about reduction of CO2 emissions, and that is important. It's real financial instruments, so that policy and this target is to be achieved. And about the question of the 2 draft laws that were registered in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine about the creation of the Carbonization Fund and the rise of carbon tax. So in European Business Association, we do not support the draft law of 4346 about the rise of carbon tax, because one more time, there is no explanation of economic nature and of the consequences that this will have on a real reduction of CO2 emissions. And when we speak about the 2nd draft law that is related to the previous one, it's 4347. It's the creation of the Carbonization Fund. To be honest, it's not a bad idea in it, but the draft law should be, we think, completed with a definitive list of measures and events, especially related to the reduction of CO2 emissions. This with a definitive amount of financing of these events, and we are going to strive for some stimulating measures for companies, just to allow them to use up to 70% of the environmental tax, especially of this tax of for CO2 emissions, on investments in environmental protection activities and on capital investment in reducing of CO2 emissions of their facilities. So there is the position of European Business Association. If you have any questions, I would be happy to try to find the answer. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for such meaningful speech. I guess if we would have time for a Q&A session, we make it after all of the esteemed speakers are done, and then I will address all the possible questions either from our speakers or either from people following us on Facebook or for Zoom for you. For now, thanks for that. Thanks for presenting the position of European Business Association concerning this topic. And now, once again, I would like to,
thank you very much for everybody. Thank you, Viktor. I have to go. I will follow you on Facebook. See you. Bye.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being with us. Okay, then our discussion is going forward. So like Mr. Vladislav has some time concerns, and now I'm delighted to give the floor for the senior associate of the law firm Asters, Bogdan Shmorgun. I guess the technical troubles won't make a problem for us. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Viktor. Hope the 3rd time is my lucky one. And now you can hear me well. Today I will speak with no presentation due to the technical problems as well. But I think that we had a lot of talk today about the carbon tax and the emission trade system. And from the legal standpoint, these are the two main and principal ways to regulate the emissions, the air pollutions. And so in our country, what we have right now is a system where the producers of the air pollutants, they simply declare the number of the air pollutants and then should comply, and since 2020 to monitor these air pollutions. This is one of the way to regulate the ecological problems, and the second one, which is also applied here in Ukraine, that the so-called carbon tax, which is very low relatively to the European Union countries. We are at 10 or 20 times higher, amounting up to 30 euros. And what I think now that today the new production platforms that are being constructed, they have a very good potential in regard to the investments they have and to the possible technical instruments. So the more or less they are having their contractors who motivate the numbers for the air pollutants to be produced, and after that they are having the permits that are specially provided by the Ministry of Nature if this is the first group of pollutants, and the local local departments from the Ministry of Justice, I mean the regional ones, that are being granted with the permits for air pollutants. This is actually, and of course they have to pay this carbon tax amounting to 10 Ukrainian hryvnias. But this is only all what we have for today from our regulation, and as far as we're concerned, since September, it was 28th or 29th of 2020, we have the new legislative initiative that concerns the unified environmental permit that should also regulate this the problem of the air and water and ground pollution together, which is implemented in accordance with the European Union Directive 2010/75, and which is also the way for improvement of the regulation sphere, because actually it was elaborated based the European regulations, and which is also incorporated now in most of European countries, because the directive was adopted 10 years ago and entered into force since 2011. And for today, this unified environmental permit, it gathers the possible the two actually functions of the for the producers. They should have, in case this draft law should be passed by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, they would have to first of all motivate their emissions, and then to actually move forward with the monitoring, which is the second legally which is now the second separate legal instrument for the control of air pollutions. But considering that Asters law firm was also involved in elaboration of this law, we understand that there are too many stimulus that may concern the motivation of the air pollution. But for today, actually, the separate legal mechanism for the creation of the platform for the trade of the emission, for the trade of the capacities for the production of the emission, I mean the quotas, it is not clearly stipulated by the law and should be created on the separate node. Maybe this could be done upon the passing of the draft law 4167 that concerns the unified environmental permit, or otherwise there should be elaborated the separate regulation that could grant a right to the producers to actually exchange the quotas that is a usual thing for the European countries that use this emission trading system, and that is actually not working in Ukraine. So to sum up, I think that the most important here is to follow all the international best practices. I mean, the Paris Convention, the European Union directives, and our strategy that is dedicated to the carbon decrease, and to create the possibility for the free trade, because this should be deemed as one of the most effective economic stimulus for the improvements and for the gathering of the investments. I mean, from the private companies to reinvest their income into the lowering of the air pollution and other emissions production. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bogdan, for such an insight into the legal sphere, into what is going on and what is the best. And our discussion is going forward. So I'm delighted to give the floor to Oleksiy Ryabchyn, advisor of the Vice Prime Minister for European Euro-Atlantic integration and advisor of the Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources. Please, Mr. Oleksiy.
Okay, so I will turn my video. Hello, everybody, one more time. Happy to hear and participate in this interesting discussion with different stakeholders. And I guess what could be my valuable input to the discussion is to balance the discussion with the policy making perspective. I'm not saying on contrary to what I've been saying to business, but to balance the discussion, because apparently, as from the behavioral point of view, definitely business doesn't want to have any kind of restrictions, any kind of new taxes, so business never will be for this. But let's be honest, Olga and Vlad, who is left, and anybody else, business do understand that carbon tax will be increased. Business has no doubt in that this will be increased, this will be transformed later into emission trading system. So the things with CO2 is the next big thing that business needs to care about. So it's logically that business are in defensive or protectionist position, which is clear, and this is obvious for not only Ukraine but many other states. It's obvious that the things related to the climate change are now in the top of the agenda, not only in European Union, but also in China, as Viktor rightly mentioned, with the Chinese ambition to have climate neutral economy in 2060, but saying that up to 2030, they will be increasing the emission. The same goes for Japan, for South Korea, who declare the climate ambitions, climate neutrality to 2050. And also it will be much more influenced when Biden become a president. And I remember being a member of parliament and being a climate negotiator from MNP side. And we used to work with the Obama's climate envoy. And now it will be Mr. Kerry, who used to be the state secretary for the United States. So I have no doubt, and I have no, how to say, I'm not naive, and I know what it will be done in order to promote the climate neutrality, in order to promote renewables, energy efficiency, mobility, in order to phase out coal, gas, oil, etc., etc. So we need to be prepared for this. So it's like from a policy side. So the Ukrainian government, as well as other governments all over the world, will be engaged in a lot of climate negotiation, climate diplomacy activity, and this might affect the economy. In what way? Like, are they positive or negative? And it's everything in our hand. Like if we will be able to, to overcome and to work on the opportunities and focus on them, like we will be just the winner. Not only the economy, but also the population, who will receive a better environment and more like green job possibility. If we will just focus on challenges, on problems, and what not be tackled opportunities, like we will lose. So we need to mix. This is my advice that I give to all the stakeholders, like focus both on opportunities and challenges, but more on opportunities. This approach will help us to to move forward the very hard agenda that we are now having toward this. But secondly, we need also to focus on, I call it the climate architecture. By climate architecture, I mean definitely the NDCs, who are the top of this. So it's kind of our goal. But then NDC is just a goal, but the instruments of like reaching NDCs, they are reforming carbon taxation. I'm not using deliberately increasement or decreasement or anything like this. Like I'm talking about a proper reform from a taxation point of view and from a spending point of view. Of course, business willing to have this share of a pie from a CO2 emission, same as customers who are paying for the cost that business is putting at the price of the product when they are taxed by the government. So it's not only the industries who taking the burden of the CO2 taxation as many others, but the customers, the final customers also is paying. And if we will speak about the CO2 emissions, so like last year it was 1 billion hryvnias of CO2 emissions that went directly into the state budget. But interesting to speak about spending from the budget. So from the budget last year, there was allocated 1.6 billion hryvnias to the State Energy Efficiency Fund and 40 million hryvnias to the warm loans. So basically, CO2 income to the budget 1 billion hryvnias, and out of the budget for the decreasement of CO2 into the population level, not on business, so population like 2 billion. Not to speak about any other, like we need to see the whole picture of the fossil fuel subsidies versus the green subsidies. And like soon I know that these articles will be prepared by like several MPs discussing, like starting the issue about the fossil fuel spending in the budget and environmental spending in the budget will be very interesting to hear and to kickstart this debate. So if just to speak like, and how much money does business, I don't know, if we take in a big metallurgical plant or the heat power station or any other big entity, how much money does it need to decrease the CO2? Because it's not emission, it's not a pollution, basically, not NOx, SOx. So when you can put filter and switch on the filter and decrease the pollution, it's emission of CO2, which could be only reduced by the energy efficiency or changing the technology, which is enormously high. And the state is not able to compensate it from this environmental taxation. And not to forget that like people who are suffering from the pollution from the industrial enterprises, so there are a lot of taxes going to environmental measure. But here I would like strongly agree with Olga, so we need to revise on what they are, what these environmental taxes are spent either on creating a park in the center of the city in this kind of environment, like, well, maybe, from one point of view, but I would challenge this. So this definitely needs to be revised. So this is why I'm speaking about the reforming of carbon taxation, reforming of environmental taxation, and to see about like the spending part. But I don't see the possibility of the Ukrainian state to compensate this kind of a modernization in the way that the business is willing to do, because all this kind of CO2 increasing stuff is also influencing the energy poverty of the people. And in many other countries in the world, if the CO2 taxes are being raised, so the first thing that everybody is targeting is the energy poverty of the population. And our MPs and our government is always sensible toward this stuff. So it will be a next big thing to discuss, where to spend, to allocate the money from the CO2. There are so many people who's willing to take this money, and we will see. It will be an interesting political debate. But like speaking about climate infrastructure, we need to speak the MRV, which already been talked. Just speak about the emission trading system, how to modify the CO2 tax on one industry that is not covered by the emission trading system, and emission trading system covered by another. This is a big debate, how to modify it and how to link it up with the carbon border adjustment mechanism that is now being developed. And there are like 4 different scenarios of it, and nobody knows. So it's a very difficult topic for the policymaker, how to create a proper functioning climate infrastructure that will not harm the development of the national economy, will not be a burden for the industry, but it will be more or less ambitious, not for us to be, the stick of climate diplomacy. It's a highly challenging task, and I'm happy to discuss it further. And thanks for Viktor for organizing a decent paper to discuss in this kind of a discussion. So summarizing, like everything regarding the climate policy is now being taken seriously by business, by authority. It's not about let's sell more hot air and buy some corruptive schemes. It's about the economy. It's about functioning of our industries. It's about functioning of many people, families of workers. So it will it might affect definitely the development of the state in one or another way. Either it will be decoupling of economic growth, and we will reduce the consumption, we will reduce the fossil fuel that we get from different countries, we will reduce subsidies on the coal economy, and this amount of money we will spend to some green jobs, green development, and competitiveness of our economy, and benefit for the well-being of our citizens. Or it will be continuum of deindustrialization, and it will be a failure. So everything in our hands, colleagues. So happy to participate with you in the discussion what needs to be done further. And the government is constantly coordinating its activity with the European side. And I'm really happy that we have a fruitful conversation with our partners. We are the first countries in the world that receive a kind of focused dialogue with the European side. So basically these policies have now been developed in the European Union, more than like 40, 50 policies on European Green Deal. We are not the member of European Union. We have our DCFTA, but we have an opportunity to influence the debate. This is the most valuable stuff that the government were proposed to business. So we created an instrument for sharing views with the European side and able to influence the current debate. And please use the government proper way for you, because we are partners and we are like-minded with you. But also we're thinking not only about business, we're thinking about well-being of our people, about the CO2 reduction, about the pollution and emission reduction. So the government will be all the time backed up with another stakeholders who are the NGOs, who are the people, not only the business. So in this fruitful dialogue, we will find a proper solution for the very hard and very, very rocket science solution. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Oleksiy, for such an insight inside the world of parliamentary diplomacy, which you presented while you was MP and presenting Ukraine in the COP and in the insight of the point of view of executive bodies. Now, I want us to hear perspective of the scholars, what scholars think about the aforementioned problem and about the key points of our discussion mentioned by all our esteemed speakers. We have heard the point of view of international organization, of business, of executive bodies, of law firm. And now I would like to invite to speak our next speaker is Mr. Viktor Karamushka. He is a Ph.D. in biology, associate professor, and the head of environmental studies of the department in National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. So the Mr. Viktor will give his comments, his remarks, whatever he wants to share with us about some key points of our discussion, key points of a report presented by our think tank, or of the aforementioned points of our speakers. So practically anything related to the theme of the ETS and carbon tax reforms in Ukraine. Please, floor is yours. Please pull the microphone on, because you have switched off your microphone.
Okay, now can you hear me? First of all, I would like to thank Viktor for inviting me to participate in these discussions, in spite of I'm not considering myself as a deep specialist and expert in this area. But for me, it's very interesting to get involved in such area. On the other hand, I would like to share some observations which I got right now. So first of all, I would like to emphasize that policy about climate and greenhouse gases emissions reduction is an inevitable task for our country. And as mentioned, recent speaker, business understand that CO2 gases emission should be properly managed, and policy is very important. And in this regard, we have to keep balance between interest of government, policymaker, producers, and customers, and some other parties. And actually, our efforts are focused at the ambition goal to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. And actually, there are two most common market mechanisms to achieve this goal: trade in greenhouse gases emissions quotas and carbon tax. And both mechanisms are aimed at forming such a price for emissions that can, first of all, to change the behavior of producers, customers, and investors. Secondly, stimulate innovations in technology and their practical applications. And thirdly, create environmental, economic, and social benefits. What is the key difference between these two approaches? Carbon tax has to be set by government, and so carbon tax, the government sets the price and allows the market to determine the amount of greenhouse gases emissions. In the case of trading emissions quotas, the government sets limits on the amounts of emissions and allows the market to determine the price. We know that carbon tax are introduced in Ukraine since 2011, as far as I remember, and the price was relatively low, 41 kopica per ton of CO2. Since last year, these taxes were increased sufficiently up to 10 hryvnias per ton. But as to compare to practices which are currently applied in European Union countries, it's still very low. This is one issue. Second one that relates to the situation that all this revenue, tax revenue, are going to state budget, and used to be, they are not available for environmental measures. So just paying the taxes. Business has no interest in technological improvements and so on. So another mechanism which is very important, it's a implementation, introducing of system of emission trading quotas. Introduce the system of trading of emission quotas. And what we have now, to introduce this mechanism, we have to, first of all, to create legal basis, and we have some steps already been done. First of all, we approved law on the monitoring, reporting of emissions, which is first steps in these directions. But apart of this, in the case of exporting of goods and commodities, these goods and commodities are subject for mechanism, carbon border adjustment mechanism, and some other requirements which are currently applying in European Union and in other countries. So we have to adhere to these requirements. And we observe and we see positive experience of many countries in applying this mechanism. So it means that Ukraine has opportunity to apply this mechanism as well. But what is important in this area? To follow international practices and implementation of these mechanisms within the country, we have to work in the direction of keeping opportunities and facing challenges, keeping balance between challenges and opportunities. Of course, business face some challenges, but these challenges in the prices used to be shared with customers. So it relates to, in fact, it relates to everybody. So in this case, dialogue between key stakeholders of this system should be directed to find relevant, proper solution for implementation of greenhouse gases emission trading systems in Ukraine. And it should involve all sectors of stakeholders. I mean, policymakers, government, business, customer, and other parties. This is just in general comments.
Yeah, thanks for presenting your view and your spotlight about the aforementioned topic of our discussion. Dear speakers, we have 15 minutes left from our discussion. I suggest I would ask you one question, one like small question, but you also have the opportunity to express the comments regarding the speeches of other speakers. Maybe you had some point that contrasted with your perception of carbon tax or etc., or you want to underscore some remarks, something like this. And like my question, which I would like to ask you, is actually like the question of like informational partner of our discussion, Ukrainian radio, is when I had the radio broadcast streaming about our event, I was asked, and what levels the carbon should be priced, because we have like a different approach to carbon setting, like 10 hryvnias for now, like 41 kopecks till 2018. We have some examples of Sweden or Switzerland with $130 for one permit within the ETS. So like my question is, how do you think and what and which level this cap should be set it or you should evolutionize? Till which sum should we strive? Should it be evolving or what? So like your thoughts about the possible setting of price of the carbon, because I guess this is one of the most important things on which we stakeholders should theoretically have a consensus. And if you have to comment the speeches of our speakers, you are asked to do so. And we'll start with the Madam Olga, as I was the second speaker in the row, please.
Thank you, Viktor. Yes, I have a little comment, and I think that this comment will more or less give the answer to your question. So about the level of price and about the cost of ecological modernization, especially when we talk about metallurgical sector. Recently, there was a presentation of one of our analytical center. It's a GMK center, which was also invited for today's discussion, but unfortunately, their representative is absent. So they they made a calculation, and they concluded that to reduce the CO2 emissions in metallurgy till 2030, the metallurgical sector has to invest $2.6 billion annually. Now the investments are about $1 billion annually. So I think that some calculations should be made in each of our sectors, especially in energy sector, which one of the most the biggest producer of CO2 emissions, and cement, for example, production, or transport sector, just to understand what amount of investment should be used just to achieve the target for in reducing of CO2 emissions. And after we know all the costs and all our possibilities and instruments we have now, we could only then determine the level of price we all should pay to achieve this carbon neutrality. And the first not ask, but concern of business is just to be predictable, because we cannot increase the tax rate from year to year for 3 times, 4 times, or 10 times. We just, in business, we want to understand which price we should pay this year, next 5 years, and so on. Because it directly influences our investment and our profit, and even our rentability that has to be achievable and realistic for our country, and not allow us to deindustrialize the country by achieving our environmental commitment. Thank you.
This is Madam Olga. So I would like to add a little remark. So we were saying about the energy generation. I want to remind our speakers, the people following us on Zoom, on Facebook, then, for example, pursuant to the directive on the European trading scheme, the electricity producers are not allowed to have free allowances to emit greenhouse gases. So like when we compare it with the metallurgy sector, with other sectors, there are some like a minimum cap, but for the electricity production, there is no cap. So all electricity produced, exceptions for some like particular producers, are subject to pay all the sums of money. Okay, like moving forward, and I guess we'll speak in a timely manner for our other speakers. Mr. Bogdan, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. I think I should join the opinion of Olga, because among our legal opinion, we consider this that the most crucial here is to, first of all, to make all the calculations, to make this the regulations clear for business, from the business perspective, and then what is more important here is to have a good and clear regulation on the mechanism and on the carbon tax application, because you know, the law should be accurate in the wordings, and this is why I think that all the instruments should be developed in kind of precise and clear regulations, not like we have something like in draft law 3346, because replacing the amount is not the just I mean, there is a lot of more issues, like the base for tax calculations, possible tax deductions, and so on. And therefore, from the legal point of view, I think that the elaboration of economically reasonable and accurate wording for the new draft law is the essential. Is what we have to do the first while elaborating this regulation. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Oleksiy, you.
Yes, thank you, colleague. Like this, like I would respectfully disagree with the moderator's question, because like you asked like what the level of price should be and put in the example of Sweden. But like one size doesn't fit at all. Like Sweden doesn't have coal mining industry, so like it's different. Like carbon tax is deliberate tax to eliminate the fossil fuel economy. Let's put it that way. And like it's like we cannot compare Ukraine and Sweden like to like is it good or bad? But like let's speak about Poland. They have the emission trading system and they have the CO2 tax, which is like starting from €1, but like the most of the industry is covered by the emission trading system with the different kind of allowances, but they have a CO2 tax. So basically, I wasn't saying about the level of price. I'm saying about the reforming, because currently we have 10 hryvnias for those who emit 500 tons of the CO2, and they are paying in advance. If they are not paid, if they didn't emit, the state should reimburse them. And it's really a huge burden to administrate this tax, what the state fiscal administration is saying. There are, like, I work in the Ministry of Energy and Environmental Protection, and we had 3 to 4 different concepts of how to reform the CO2 tax. So to do this as a kind of tax for the importing and extraction of coal, gas, and oil. So to put it in the head of the value chain, and this means that we will cover all the CO2. It will increase the revenues. We know how like it doesn't affect the population. It will affect the coal industry, which is also now in decline. So there are pro and contra, but like the revenues, it's like much more bigger than 1 billion hryvnias, and it could be allocated to the different needs. But when we saw the European Green Deal adoption, when we saw this carbon border adjustment mechanism, we did understand that just to lobby I don't know, decarbonization fund or climate fund or whatever, like without a proper climate infrastructure, it would be not really great. But this is like from the governmental point of view. From the MP's point of view, and I have this experience for 5 years, it's a bit different. So you just need more money to pay pensions. You don't need more money to do some, I don't know, repayment in your constituency. And the CO2 tax is the source of income. So let's just increase them in one day without a proper consultation. 226 done. So basically, I am not, how to say it, I wouldn't lobby for this, and I would be hardly against this. But this is a possible scenario that next week or till the end of the year, the carbon tax could be increased because we lack money. We need to pay, I don't know, entrepreneurs because of lockdown or whatever, or pensions or whatever. And the CO2 tax seemed as a decent source of resource from might seem from economic point of view. So we need, like, if the proper reform would not be proposed as soon as possible, balancing interest of businesses and the population, I bet that the MPs will have more appetite of just increasing the CO2, which will be additional burden for the enterprise, which then they followed will put to the customers, so to the population or to the household or to SMEs, and this will increase these flows of resources. But that, like as I said, like a lot of amount of constructions that possible could be done. So this will be the topic of further conversation. Thank you very much. I need to run for another call. So like good luck to everybody and have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot for being with us today. Thanks you for your comments as well. So yeah, so we have 2 minutes till the end, but I guess we'll take 2 or 3 extra minutes. So to end our discussion in a proper way. So like I would like to ask the same question to Oleksandr Sushchenko. Like Mr. Oleksandr, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I've just lost. Sorry, your last question. Could you repeat this?
Yeah, so like my question was about the level of the carbon setting with regard to world relatives, to the market relatives, to the prices in our neighbor states or around the world. So what is your point of view towards the whole idea of carbon pricing?
So, actually, carbon pricing is the tool to see the level, to measure the level of climate-related risks. So this is the main reasoning of having this. I mean, just looking back to what are doing the businesses in European Union or in other countries, because internal carbon pricing, this is a response from the corporate level to inability of the government to let's say impose
Yeah, Mr. Oleksandr, I guess we lost you. If you resume, we will give you the session. Like Mr. Viktor, do you have something to add or to contradict to
Just
the
one
previous speakers?
Carbon taxes belongs to environmental taxes, and this revenue should go to environmental sector, to environmental measures. It seems to me that considering which level of taxes should be installed, we have to consider as well how we will use revenue from these taxes. If it will go to the same sector for technological improvement and so on, so it's one issue. If it will be used just for budget purposes by government, it's another issue. This is my comment.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. So like Mr. Oleksandr, are you with us?
Yes. I've just have some connection problems, but just to sum up what I was trying to deliver as my, let's say, perception of the situation is that carbon pricing is just a tool to see the level of climate-related risks, and that's all. It's not the fiscal. Yeah. It's not the fiscal instrument itself. In this case, it should be considered as an instrument to give an incentive to reduce CO2 emissions, but not to get additional revenues for the state budget. So this should be understood, let's say, finally by our government. So the key message is to introduce effective and let's say functionable carbon pricing scheme. Obviously market-based, and I'm arguing for the ETS itself. So this is it. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. I guess we had a full discussion involving the key stakeholders and presenting the different point of view, both of the business, NGO, academics. law firms and the governmental representatives with experience in the parliament. I guess this is it. We'll end at this point. The recording will be available in our Facebook link. I will send all of the speakers it. So thanks for being with me today. Thanks for accepting my invitation to discuss our report of the Asters think tank on this very burning topic in Ukrainian society and in law making. Thanks again. It was my honor to moderate this discussion. Now we'll end the recording and end the Facebook broadcast streaming. And again for being with me today.